Demons, werewolves, treasures, unseen beasts, the magical world, the land of demons. These words, filled with uncertainty, exist only in fairy tales in the modern world. However, is this really the case? A young guy is walking down the street of the night city. His stomach with its rumbling lets the owner know that it would be nice to have a snack. The guy himself is also very tortured and extremely dissatisfied with the fact that he wanted to eat right in the middle of the night. This guy's name is Luya and he is the main character of this story, who is about to have an affair. Suddenly the guy noticed that a light was on in one of the cafes on the road. This surprised him and he came closer. The guy smiled and, out of habit, turned to the owner of the cafe, asked her why she was working so late today and asked if they usually closed at 9. However, in the next second, Lu saw that several very beautiful women were sitting at the tables, and one of the employees of the institution was dressed very openly and had good forms. The guy looked around the room and could not understand why there were so many beauties in it, because as far as he remembers, an elderly couple used to be the owners and there were almost no guests in the cafe. At that moment, the same waitress almost came up to Lu and called him a dear guest, asked what he wanted. The young man could not restrain himself and stared at the girl's chest, which led not only to nosebleeds, but also to the formation of an extraordinary associative series, because of which Lu replied that he wanted milk. The girl repeated the guy's order, saying that he wanted a glass of milk and asked if he would have something else. Her calmness made Lu uncomfortable, so he looked away and quietly added that he wanted another portion of fried rice with him. After that, the young man nervously swallowed a lump in his throat as he saw two more equally beautiful ladies at the next table, who greeted him with a smile. At this time, the voice of the news anchor was heard from the TV, who said that paranormal phenomena had become more frequent recently, and if earlier such events were called superstitions, now they are called the resurrection of supernatural power. The man also added that the reason why this phenomenon could have occurred has not yet been established, so the government strongly recommends that all citizens refrain from walking at night. At that moment, the characteristic sound of electricity was heard and darkness fell in the cafe. The guy immediately decided that there was a normal blackout, but did not notice that there were several burning eyes in the air around him. The next second, the light turned on and then the guy saw a large number of monsters around him. Lu immediately backed away and couldn't figure out what the hell it was. That girl was still standing next to the guy. She grabbed his shoulders, but her hands at that moment were not human at all. The guy got scared and screamed. Then the girl turned to Mr. Beishu and asked him if he was waiting for this chance. After that, she pulled her long tongue out of her mouth, pulled out the side of the main character, and told the same gentleman that if he did not appear now, there would be no other time. At that moment, there was another flash of electricity, and Lu still did not understand what was happening. Suddenly, a small white flying dragon appeared. He flew very close to the main character and told him that if the guy didn't want to die here, he had to devour him. The young man still didn't understand anything, but before he could answer something, the dragon flew into his stomach and moved into the guy's body. The girl was unhappy with this and asked Beishu about what he was doing, but the gentleman did not answer her, but only told Lu that even though he made the decision for the guy, he would hope that the main character would not blame him for this, because after all, this world has already changed. After that, the main character began to consider himself and his body. His hair had changed color from black to white, and some kind of electrical energy, similar to magic, was emanating from him. Lu didn't understand what it was at all, but Beishu told him that now was not the time to delay and he would explain everything to him later, and at the moment their main task was to kill all these monsters. Then the girl angrily shouted that Beishu really annoys her, because he dared to betray them and transfer his power to a person. After that, the girl stretched out her terrible non-human hand to the guy's side, but that same electric energy created a dome around the main character, and did not allow the girl to reach Lu. Beishu started talking to the young man again and said that he needed to deal with them as soon as possible, because his strength was already running out. The guy still didn't understand anything and asked the gentleman about how he should deal with these monsters. In response, the dragon said that the guy should not worry, because he will help him with everything, and the main character only needs to focus and beat. Lu obeyed the advice of the gentleman and did just that, hitting the girl with his fist. Along with the usual blow, the girl also received a blow from the same electric energy. After that, she screamed and her eyes glowed red. Then Beishu laughed and said that this weakling could not stand even one blow. The main character at this moment was still in shock from what he himself had just done. The guy admired the power that was given to him and was very surprised. Evil spirits, that's what people call monsters whose existence defies scientific explanation. These creatures came to the human world together with a phenomenon called the resurrection of supernatural power. After that, for unknown reasons, inexplicable cases began to occur in the world of people, and now the main character could not help but believe in what seemed absurd to him before, because now he himself has become one of these mysterious monsters. Beishu dragged the big hand of the slain monster in his small paws, one of those that lay hammered around the main character. He gave this hand to the guy and he began to put it in his mouth, making great efforts. While the main character was trying to chew it, Beishu told the guy to be patient and not spit it out in any case. He explained that if Lu didn't eat enough flesh, they would both die. With great effort, the young man still swallowed this piece of meat. The guy was kneeling on the floor, barely finding the strength to hold on. He asked the gentleman about how long he would have to do all this. Suddenly, the situation around the main character changed. He found himself alone on some small island, which apparently floated in space. Lu did not notice the change immediately, but when he began to look around, he asked Beishu about what kind of place it was. The gentleman replied that this was the spiritual world of the guy. He also added that until his wounds fly in and he recovers his body, he will not be able to leave the body of the main character. Lu took the little dragon in his hands, looked into his eyes and said that Beishu had spoken very beautiful words at the very beginning. But now the young man understands that in fact he just needed someone who could eat the flesh of all these creatures to help the dragon heal its wounds. In response to this, the gentleman calmly replied that he did not see it. Nothing bad, because, in any case, if it wasn't for him, the guy would have been dead a long time ago. This answer angered the main character. He threw Beishu out of his hands on the ground and said that in that case, as soon as he could find another master, he would get rid of the dragon. However, the creature landed on the ground and said that Lu could not even dream about it, because he is a Kilin, the most mysterious creature in the world, and he would gladly look at the person who is able to expel him. The young man clicked his tongue and said he didn't believe him. The next day, the main character went to high school as if nothing had happened. There the guy was talking to his classmates, and one of his friends called the young man brave, because he was not afraid to walk at night in such an environment that is now happening in the country. The guy only calmly replied that he did not watch the news and he had never heard of any resurrection of supernatural power before. Then a classmate asked him if the guy had also met any of these creatures. Lu just laughed in response and said that he had swallowed them all himself and thought to himself that one of them was being digested in his stomach right now. Of course, the classmate did not believe the young man and said that this is what I am all about and no one knows how to babble like he does. At that moment, a young girl was passing by the desks. She also approached the main character and asked him to hand over his homework. Lu's classmate, who was talking to him, was embarrassed by the girl's beauty and immediately handed her his homework, calling her Headman Duin. The main character fell off his chair at that moment, as he was distracted by the girl's chest and could not keep his balance. After taking homework from a classmate of a young man, the girl turned around with the words that I probably didn't write anything as always and went the other way. The young man just looked after her in silence. Why did he jump up from the floor, go up to his friend and ask him if Headman Duin had done breast plastic surgery? A classmate was surprised by this question and asked the main character if the girl had always been like this. Then the guy took out a photo of the headman from his pocket, showed it to a classmate and said that the girl had always been like this. The guy only replied that the girl had practically not changed. However, the main character did not agree with him, because it was obvious that not only the size of Duin's breasts had changed, but also her face, as well as her eyesight, because now the girl did not wear glasses. However, all classmates said that Lu was simply blind and there was no difference between these two photos at all. At that moment, the young man realized that out of the whole class, he was the only one who noticed the changes that had happened to the Headman Duin's Ioxu, because the girl seemed to have been replaced. Moreover, it was noticeable that all the guys at school were just bursting into it up to their ears. It all looked too suspicious for the main character. After school, the guy decided to follow the girl and hid behind one of the bushes in the yard. However, Lu turned out to be a bad spy, because the headman immediately figured him out. Duin leaned over to the guy, greeted him and asked about what he was doing here in this position. The young man was scared, became shy and replied that he was just waiting for someone. After that, he abruptly hurried home and said that it was already late, and it was time for him to go. Finally, he added that the girls should also hurry home. The headman smiled in response and then invited the guy to go home together. The main character did not expect such a proposal and fell into a stupor. Lu immediately started dreaming about how he and the girl would come to her house and do obscene things. However, the guy tried to drive these thoughts out of his head as soon as possible and come to his senses. The young man did not even understand where these fantasies came from in his head. At that moment, the guy realized that this was not a fantasy, and everything was really happening. Lu tried to restore it all, his hands just refused to obey him. The guy never wanted his first time to happen to the headman. In the end, Lu was able to overcome himself and stop the girl. He got out from under her, got out of bed and said he didn't mean it, and also apologized. The guy was very uncomfortable. Seeing this, the girl only became even more fun. She smiled and said that, apparently, the young man is very worried and she first goes to the shower while he waits for her. After these words, the girl undressed completely and went towards the bathroom. The guy exhaled with relief and lay down on the bed. But the next second a girl's bra flew into his face. Then the bathroom door slammed shut. Then Lu decided to talk to Mr. Beishu. He asked him about what was going on with his classmate. In response to this, Beishu asked if she was obsessed with something. Then the young man asked the master if he could tell what was wrong with the girl. The creature replied that he did not pay attention to it, because he thought that the main character did not want him to look, but added that only a werewolf fox could be so seductive. After that, the guy picked up Beishu, looked into his eyes and asked if such a fox had weaknesses. The master replied that there were not one, but as many as 5. Firstly, such a fox is afraid of monsters, and she is also afraid of wizards. Also, she is afraid of gods and rich people, and finally the 5th, she is afraid of virtues. The main character thought about it and realized that none of the above applies to him. Just at this moment, the girl came out of the shower in one towel and joyfully went to Lu. In response, the guy smiled slyly and asked the girl if she had washed well, and why she had not washed off her dirt. This question angered Duan and she asked the main character about how he understood it. Then the guy got out of bed and replied that anyone could smell a fox from afar. In response, the girl said that in this case she would no longer pretend. After these words, 6 tails appeared behind her back, ears on her head, and fangs on her teeth. Then the werewolf fox said that the death of a young man had come. At this moment, Beishu also counted the number of tails behind the girl's back, as it meant the fox's skill. The girl attacked the main character, but he was able to parry her first attack. Then she attacked him again, and after that the master noticed that another tail had grown behind the fox's back. The gentleman understood something and therefore ordered Luya to run as soon as possible. Beishu then explained that if this fox is 9-tailed, then both of them are finished. The guy obeyed his master and ran to the exit, but the girl immediately realized where the young man was aiming and blocked his path. Then Lu jumped on top of the fox, and pushing off from her hands, flew out the window, breaking the glass in it. The fox did not expect such a maneuver and was very surprised. Finally, the guy just said goodbye to her, calling the girl a smelly fox. When the main character jumped out of the window, he landed on the ground and walked towards his house, but before that he made sure that the fox did not follow him. After making sure that no one was following him, he calmly headed home, talking to Beishu at the same time. The master claimed that the headman of the young man and the werewolf fox had merged. At first, the main character decided that this was the same thing that happened between him and Beishu, but the gentleman said that this was not the case at all. The master explained that not all magical creatures are as kind as he is, and most of them just the opposite hate people. After these words, the guy asked to tell about it in more detail. Beishu said that when the resurrection of supernatural power began, creatures that have the ability to penetrate the bodies of people with similar traits gradually took over their bodies, thoughts, memories, and desires. The master suggested that the classmate of the main character became so liberated and beautiful just because of the influence of the werewolf fox. However, in response to this, Lu said that the last elder was not like that at all, and these words have nothing to do with her, because in fact she has always been very cultured and balanced. After hearing this, the master realized that they had been fooled and it was not a werewolf fox at all. Then the main character could not stand it, grabbed Beishu and said that he had told the guy that he had now become one of them, and also promised with his experience and strength to make the main character the most invincible in this world filled with monsters. The master replied with annoyance that he really said that, and then told the young man that now, he would show him his wounds. After that, a kind of projection of Beishu's body appeared in front of Lu, only much larger. There were a lot of glowing dots on it in different places, and each of them, according to the master himself, testified to a wound. He added that now he is not even able to understand what kind of creature is in front of him due to the fact that his eyes are injured. Lu was very surprised by what he saw and asked the master about which of these wounds he healed after the guy ate that piece of monster flesh. The gentleman replied that there were none yet, because he was going to give the main character the right to choose. He also added that it makes absolutely no difference to him which wounds to heal right now. Looking at the projection even more closely, Lu said that Beishu looks like a system with a skill tree. The master replied that he did not understand at all what the main character was talking about, but he was probably right, because with each healed wound, the guy would get a new skill. After that, after a little thought, the young man replied that the first thing they should do was to cure their eyes, because they need to understand how to deal with enemies. After that, the master's golden gaze was activated. He allowed, with the help of just looking at the creature, to tell what it was. After that, the guy decided to return as soon as possible to the apartment from which he had recently escaped. When he finally reached that very door, he kicked it out and said that he did not think at all that they would meet again so soon. There, the guy jokingly added that he and the girl had not seen each other for a long time and he had already missed them. When the girl turned to the main character, he applied his new golden gaze skill. Then the master told the guy that there was a masochist in front of them. He also added that since she managed to turn into a fox, it means that the guy's classmate was hiding her true identity behind a mask all the time. Otherwise, she would not have been able to arouse the masochist's interest. Lui asked the gentleman about whether it was possible to defeat her. Beishu replied that it was possible and told the young man to act. At this moment, the girl just ran towards the main character in order to attack him. She said that she was just going to go outside to look for the guy, but he came back himself very timely. When the girl ran up to the young man very close and was about to strike, Lu jumped up and was behind the girl, while using his magic. Thus, he was able to tear off her disguise and was ready to see what this girl was hiding. She became confused and began to scream. The main character at first wanted to attack the girl again, but suddenly stopped from surprise, because his opponent was already lying on the floor unconscious in torn clothes after only one blow. Then the guy asked his master about what to do with her now and whether she will be the same when she wakes up. The gentleman was very surprised by this question and did not understand what the young man was talking about, because in his opinion he had to eat the girl as soon as possible while she was unconscious. From such a request, the main character was horrified and taken aback. Lu still didn't understand what Beishu meant when he said to eat the elder. He even decided that the master was joking. However, the gentleman calmly replied that he had already told the guy that in order for the two of them to maintain life, he needed to constantly absorb the flesh of unknown creatures. He also added that the energy from the last meal is almost over and if they miss this chance, it is not known when there will be an opportunity to eat more flesh. Finally, the master asked the guy if he really wanted to die. The main character, after listening to all this, still flatly refused to eat his classmate and said that he would not do it for anything. Then Beishu said that since the guy is so indecisive and he can't get a piece of me down his throat, then he should lend his body to the master. At that moment, the creature really moved into the guy's body and his hair turned white again, like the first time, and his pupils narrowed. Beishu had already taken the girl's body in his hands and said he would do it himself. The young man shouted from inside that it was impossible and begged the master to stop. He appeared nearby and grabbed the master's hand in order to stop him. He begged Beishu not to touch the girl's body. The master was annoyed by this behavior and asked the guy about why he was so freaked out, because they had done it before. I told Lu that it was completely different because this girl is his classmate. The main character at this time remembered how the headman had helped him out more than once in those days when Lu was not doing his homework again. The girl thank you specifically did not tell the teachers that the guy did not pass her and asked not to forget homework at home next time. However, Beishu did not react to his persuasions in any way. He just chased the boy away and said he didn't care about all these stories. Then he brutally bit into the girl's neck while she was still unconscious. However, to the surprise of the main character, the master ate only the spirit of the creature, and after he finished his meal he simply returned the body to the guy. The young man was surprised that Beishu did not actually eat the girl, and at the same time he was very happy about this coincidence. The master replied that he was only talking about magical creatures and there was no question of eating people. In response to this, the young man said that in this case, he could eat these creatures himself and the master scared him in vain. Suddenly the guy felt unwell. He felt dizzy and began to lose his balance. Beishu said that he had been in his body for too long and for now, it would be difficult for Lu to stand on his feet. He also added that the main character cannot worry, because he just needs to rest a little and everything will be back to normal. Lu asked Beishu about how long he would have enough of the flesh that he ate now. The master replied that it would only last for 3 days at most, which meant that within the next 3 days he had to find someone else, otherwise they could both die at any time. That was the last thing Lu heard before he lost consciousness and fell to the floor next to Duan. When he woke up, it was still night outside and a bright moon was shining. Lu opened his eyes and found himself lying on a bed with a soft pillow covered with a blanket. He began to look around in order to understand where he was. Then he saw the headman next to him. She asked him if he was awake. The girl was dressed in pajamas and also looked attractive. In the next second, they both became embarrassed and simultaneously asked each other if the second one was okay. This made them even more uncomfortable, and the main character was the first to break the silence. He scratched his head and said he was fine. Then Doon asked Louis if she was right that the guy knew about what kind of thing was inside her all this time. In response, the young man said that it was something like a demon, but now it is not in the girl's body and she is free and has become the same. Then the girl objected and the guy interrupted her, asking Beishu about why the girl did not return to her former appearance. The master replied that people who came into contact with unknown people will always experience side effects. The young man was surprised and asked the master if it could really be called a side effect. However, at this moment, Doon turned to Luya again with a question. The guy hurried to get out of bed and simultaneously answered her that if a demon gets into a person, then the side effects will remain forever. The girl looked at the guy in frustration and asked if this could really be considered a side effect. Lu was already standing in the doorway of the room at that moment, but he turned to the girl and said that it was really something like that. But it was even good that it would stay. On top of everything else, the girl has become much more beautiful and attractive. After that, the girl also got out of bed and told her classmate that she still had one more question. Why the demon possessed her. Lu replied that it happened because they are similar. Doon asked about what it meant. The young man replied that these creatures are called unknown, and what possessed the girl is called Masachitsa, and she is masterfully able to pretend. Doon was surprised by this. Lu added that it seems to him that there is nothing wrong with her real appearance. The girl wanted to ask the main character something, but changed her mind and said goodbye to him until tomorrow. When he got home, the main character lay down on the bed and decided that he could not continue like this anymore. At that moment, Beishu got out of his body, appeared in front of the main character, and asked him about why he suddenly thinks so. To this, Lu said that he needed to find the next victim, another unknown, who could be eaten. However, the young man was worried about what would happen if he failed to do it in 3 days. What should he do then? On top of everything else, the main character thought about what kind of wound he should heal next. Maybe a nose. Beishu helped the guy and suggested that first he should cure something that can help save the life of a young man. Otherwise he will die when he meets an unknown. Lu replied that in that case he understood everything and asked about which paw Beishu has the fastest. The master replied that the guy can choose any paw, because each has its own trick. Lu asked for the last time, before making a choice, whether he should definitely not choose a nose. The master replied that it was really not worth doing this, because spiritual forces had just recovered. And with Luya's legs it would be faster and it would be more useful to him now. At this moment, the main character chose Beishu's paw for treatment and discovered a new skill, Thunder Step. Now the guy can not only run fast, but also climb walls. Beishu congratulated him on this. Lu smiled, said it was a cool skill, then turned off the bedside lamp and went to bed. The next morning, Lu came to school as usual. One of his classmates asked another about how much he was selling homework in all subjects today. The guy replied that it would cost 45. The first one was indignant and said that it was expensive. It was at this time that the headman entered the classroom. Then the second one replied that yesterday they had already done homework in 4 subjects, but there were a lot of tasks in mathematics, so he asks 15 yuan for it. Then he asked the first guy if he would buy. After that, the guy turned to his classmates and asked them about who would pay for homework today, because he had no money. Then Luya gave the voice. He said he would pay and treats today. He also turned to a guy named Jen who was selling homework and said that he had already transferred money to his account. At the same second, the guy really got a message on his phone that 45 yuan had been credited to his card. After that, the first guy took Jen's homework and carried it towards Lu, simultaneously thanking Brother Ya for the payment. But Jen abruptly grabbed the guy by the arm and told him to stop. The classmate was scared and asked the brother about what was wrong and did he not receive the money. Jen calmly replied that only Luya could rewrite his homework, and it was up to others to decide whether the others would copy his homework from him. Then the guy laughed awkwardly and told Jen that there was nothing to worry about, because they remember the rules. The headman, who was watching all this, was extremely surprised. After no more than a few minutes, I tried to write off my homework in my notebook with great speed as soon as possible, in order to give it to everyone else later. Someone from his classmates hurried him and told him to rewrite faster, and others, on the contrary, told the guys not to make noise and not distract Lu. When the guy finally finished, he gave his notebooks to the others and asked them to give his notebooks to the headman, too, when the guys finished copying homework. After that, Doon came up to the guy and said that she would like to call him into the corridor for a few words. When the guys left the office, the main character asked her about what happened. It was obvious that Doon felt awkward and she didn't even know what words to choose, but in the end she gathered herself and asked Lee about what they all wanted there in the office. The guy smiled and said that the girl came to school so early for the first time and that's why she found this for the first time. He also added that he knows what she wants to ask and said that Doksu Jeng always does this. Doon said she knew Jeng was doing this, but she never expected him to charge the guys for it, so he also raised the price. Lu replied that it was nothing and one day he was really surprised. One day, Jeng approached Luya and calculated the gram of the pack, the number of chips in it and the price of the entire package. Presented the main character with a bill of 1900s of yuan for one chip that the guy ate from him yesterday. Hearing this, Luai was shocked and just speechless. When Doon also heard about this story, her reaction was the same. Doon was very surprised and even upset by the fact that Jeng behaved like this. Suddenly, a loud shout was heard from the classroom. The guys turned in that direction in order to see what had happened. When they entered the office, they found Jen lying on the floor and holding his right hand with his other hand. Classmates stood around him and stared in amazement. Luai turned to my friend and asked him about what had happened. In response, the friend asked in surprise if Jeng didn't like Lin Shuang. He explained that the girl had just been drinking milk and something had happened. While Lin was churning milk into foam, some of the liquid spilled out of the mug onto her skirt. The girl immediately screamed in panic, began to look around and asked classmates if anyone had a napkin. At that moment, Jen approached the girl and, holding out a pack of paper napkins, said that he had them. Lin thanked the guy and stretched out her hand to take the pack. But at that moment the guy clenched his hand into a fist. The girl looked at her classmate with surprise, as she did not understand why he did this. It was obvious that the guy had to make a lot of effort to unclench his hand back. Then he handed the napkins to the girl again and told her to take them for free. However, Lin was confused by this behavior of her classmate and did not move. At that moment, some voice in the guy's head told him to take money from the girl for a napkin. But the guy didn't answer anything, but only twisted his face and clenched his hand into a fist again. Then the classmate could not stand it and said with irritation that if the guy does not want to share with her, then she does not force him. The girl also asked Jen about whether he was going crazy by any chance. In response, the guy said that this was not the case at all. Then he fell to the floor, hitting the girl's desk in parallel, and she fell to the floor with a crash. Jeng was still holding his hand at that moment and trying to unclench his fist. One of the classmates was talking to Luya while watching Jeng and asked the main character if this behavior could be due to stress from studying or schizophrenia. The young man replied that anything was possible, but for now he could only take Jen to the infirmary. After that, the guy approached Jen and showed his phone screen, on which there was a message about the transfer of money. Lu explained that he had paid 2 yuan for the girl. After that, Jen was finally able to give a classmate a pack of silfets, and another guy helped put the desk back in place. The teacher was just standing there at that moment and didn't even know how to react. Lu put his arm around his classmate's shoulders and said that he wanted the guy to go with him so that they could discuss some kind of deal. Doon noticed this, but did nothing. After a while, the guys found themselves on the roof of the school. Then Jen asked the main character about why they came here. The young man answered the question with a question and asked his classmate what happened to him in the office. The guy replied that he didn't really understand what had happened. He could only say that it felt like some invisible force inside him was trying to fight. In response to this, the main character asked Jen a provocative question. Would he be able to kill the main character if they promised to give him 10,000 yuan for it? At first, the guy was very surprised and replied that this was not a funny joke at all and he would not do that for anything. However, the next second, his behavior changed dramatically, as if someone else had moved into him, and the guy replied that he would not miss such a chance for anything. Luya replied that his guesses were confirmed, and then used his golden gaze. With his help, he was able to see a large green monster next to his classmate. Beishu suggested to the main character that it was a goblin. These creatures benefit at every opportunity, and also have an incredible greed that they cannot hide at all. However, at the same time, they are very worried about their importance, and if you constantly scold any creatures, then their mood will immediately deteriorate. After that, I told Lu that it was easy and he would kill the goblin first. The guy was already preparing to attack, when suddenly the picture in front of his eyes became very blurry and blurry. The young man could not understand what was happening and why. The master replied that too little time had passed and it was impossible to use the golden gaze so quickly, because the body had not fully recovered yet. Due to the fact that the main character was distracted by this, the goblin managed to run up to the guy and knock him to the ground. Luai asked Master Tom what he should do now. Beishu replied that the guy should act quickly. The young man agreed with the master and was about to carry out his order when he suddenly realized that he could not see anything at all. It all started 2 years ago. Jen woke up in the middle of the night and left the room when he suddenly saw that the light was on in his parents' bedroom. He stopped and listened to their conversation. The boy's father persuaded his mother not to be treated, arguing that it would take a lot of money for chemotherapy, because she already has a late stage of cancer and it may not even help. The risks are huge, and they really need money, and the man was just afraid that they would lose everything, because their son had just started high school, and they would need a lot of money for other expenses. The woman burst into tears and covered her mouth with her hands so as not to make loud noises. She only quietly said that she understood all this and agreed with her husband. The man was crying too. He hugged his wife, put her hand in his and said that they should choose conservative treatment and maybe everything will work out. But before he could finish, Jen burst into the room and objected to his father. The boy angrily began to shout at his father, asking why he did not want to save his mother. Then he ran up to the woman, hugged her tightly and said that he would not go to school, and then let them spend the money on the treatment of his mother. The woman hugged her son in response and they both began to cry. Then the father silently joined them, while the boy still continued to shout that he did not want his mother to die. A year has passed. Jen was getting ready in the hallway and wanted to leave the house. Suddenly his father came up to him and offered to give him some money, but the guy abruptly refused them, saying that he already had enough money. The father was surprised to ask his son about where he got them from. Jen snapped again and replied that he earned them at school. The man was not satisfied with this answer. He got angry and said it was nonsense, because now the main task of the guy is only studying. Besides, they had enough money in the family, so the guy didn't need to work. Before the man had finished speaking, Jen interrupted him and said that he used to think so too, but now his mother is dead. The father abruptly became sadder and calmed down. He asked Jen if he still blames the man for all this. The boy's father began to justify himself, but he did not even listen to him. Jen said that there was no point in blaming his father because he understands perfectly well that there was no other way out. But now Jen has learned another lesson. Money is never superfluous and he no longer wants to lose loved ones. From that moment on, the guy decided that now he would do everything only for one thing: money. A year later, Jen, or rather the goblin that possessed him, fought with the main character on the roof. The guy didn't see anything, so Beishu told him from which side the enemy was preparing to strike. The goblin attacked the guy on the left, but he, thanks to the master, was able to dodge in time. Then Beishu told Luya to run and the guy listened to him. The young man was running towards the wall, but since he didn't see it, Beishu was talking countdown. 3 seconds later, the guy used a thunder step very timely and climbed the wall. Now he could walk on it. When the guy climbed high enough, the master ordered him to turn around at the goblin and insult him. Lu listened to the master and shouted to the opponent that he was a stupid freak and should die. Beishu didn't like it, as the guy repeated the same thing several times and it didn't work. The master ordered the main character to invent something more offensive. In response, the guy was indignant and said that he could not come up with something when he was under such stress and in general he was not good at it. I was still trying to squeeze something out of myself, but all he could repeat was stupid jerk. At this time, Duan was climbing up the stairs to the roof. She heard the insults and didn't understand at all what was going on there between the two guys. At this time, the goblin was preparing to jump. Beishu warned the guy to be careful, because his opponent is about to jump. Suddenly, the door to the roof opened. An angry headman burst in and turned to Luya, asked him what they would do here. However, when she saw the goblin, the girl was speechless and did not even know what to say. The main character heard that someone had come and realized that this was not good. But in the next second, the girl began to make a sound incomprehensible to anyone. From this unpleasant sound, the goblin crouched and covered his ears. I did the same thing. He could not understand what kind of sound it was and whether it was being made by the headman. Then the girl finally saw the main character. She turned to him and asked if this goblin was really Jen. She was also interested in what the guy wanted on the roof, and she even decided that the young man was praying to heaven there. In response, the guy just said that he would deal with the monster now and the headman just had to wait. He also added that his eyes could not see anything and he wanted to try to do gymnastics in the hope that it would help. He assured the girl that there was nothing to worry about and he would recover soon. In response, the girl asked what this monster needed and added that he had already gained strength and was ready to attack, so it was better for the guy to stop hanging around. Luai replied that he would massage the acupuncture points a little more and come back to normal, and the girl should scold the goblin at this time. Duan was angry and surprised by such a request, and also added that she wanted to scold the main character more at the moment. Lu only replied that he didn't have much left and he would finish soon. At that moment, the goblin got really angry and began to growl. He gathered himself and decided to attack the girl. This scared Duan. She cursed and shouted to the guy that the monster had noticed her, which means the poison should accelerate. In the next second, the main character was between the girl and the monster. The guy reacted quickly and hit the goblin hard in the face, so that he flew into the grate around the perimeter of the roof. Pleased with himself, the main character smiled, got into a fighting stance and prepared for battle. Duan was extremely surprised by what she saw. The goblin was sitting on the ground and coming to his senses, but the main character wasn't even going to let him do it. The guy gathered all his magic power into a fist, jumped up and prepared to strike his opponent from above. However, the monster was still very strong and began to fight with Luya. At some point, he grabbed the guy by the arm and threw him into that wall of the building on the roof. Duan was very scared for the guy. The young man hit his head hard against the wall and blood gushed out of his mouth. The monster gathered all its strength and prepared to attack again. He was getting closer and closer to the girl who was bending over the main character, and there was an evil smile on the monster's face. The monster grabbed the guy by the collar and lifted him off the ground. I couldn't resist Lu anymore. Then Duan intervened in the fight. She screamed, turning to the goblin, calling him a piece of shit and said that he probably just has too little dignity. Hearing this, the monster stopped abruptly and looked at the girl. Duan continued to insult him and said that everything was clear to her now, because the goblin's dignity is not just small, but it does not exist at all. The monster let go of the guy and he fell to the ground. Offended and angry, he ran towards the girl. She just froze in fear. However, the monster stopped abruptly as he felt Luya grab his leg. Seeing this, the headman shouted to the guy that he needed to take advantage of the opportunity, and he was doing something wrong. Then the young man turned to Beishu and asked him if he could use the thunder step again. The master replied that it was possible, but it would be the same as with the eyes. If a guy uses this skill now, then he will not be able to walk all day, and will lie on the ground. And then the goblin will have a chance to tear the guy to pieces. The young man listened to this, but acted in his own way. He grabbed the monster's leg, ran towards the wall and activated the thunder step. The main character flew into the door, ran at high speed and tried his best to hold the goblin in his hands. In the end, the monster's spirit came out of the guy's body and only his classmate's leg remained in the hands of the main character, while the monster's spirit flew out. Both guys fell to the floor unconscious. Seeing this, the headman was scared and shouted the name of the main character. In the next second, the goblin's spirit began to be sucked through Luya's mouth until it disappeared completely. Duan, who was watching all this, was extremely surprised. She also ran up to Jen to check on his well-being. Then the girl returned to the main character and asked him how he was feeling. The guy replied that he was fine, although in fact it was very difficult for him to restrain the urge to vomit. After that, Duan approached him and with acclaim, folding her arms on her chest, asked about how it happened and what kind of monster it was. Luai started to pretend to be a fool and say that he doesn't know anything and is shocked himself by how this goblin scattered through the air like smoke. The girl was not satisfied with this answer and angered even more. The guy continued to pretend that he didn't know anything. He began to ask her about why the girl was looking at him like that and did she really think that he had eaten this monster. Duan shouted with annoyance that the young man should immediately explain everything to her. After that, the main character fell to the ground exhausted and said that he would tell the girl how it was, but she, in turn, should help the guy to take time off from lessons. A classmate came closer to Luya, bent over him and anxiously asked what was wrong with him. The main character replied that he was a little unwell and it looked like he had broken his legs. In the evening of the same day, the guys were already sitting together in a cafe and discussing what was happening. The girl understood from Lu's words that she and Zheng had suffered at the hands of these unknown. In response, the guy said that he believes that he was the one who suffered the most. In response to this, Duan folded her arms on her chest again and asked the guy about why. In that case, his legs had already recovered. The young man replied that he just lay on the roof for a while and everything healed. Duan smiled and told the main character that he was much stronger than ordinary people, like some kind of superhero from a movie. Then Lu leaned back in his chair and said that he wasn't a superhero, because if the girl hadn't come to his aid in time, then all his bones would have been crushed. The girl was puzzled and said nothing in response. This confused the main character and he looked at her questioningly. Then Duan started talking and asked the guy if he now understands why the masochist chose her. She added that after Lu tore off her mask, she became the way she is now and can even swear. Hearing this, the young man just laughed and continued to eat his cheesecake. Duan was confused by this and asked her friend if he thought she was funny. The main character hesitated a little with the answer, drank a couple of sips from a cup of tea, and replied that he thought it was even very funny. However, then he added that the girl hides in herself not swearing, but the very thoughts that cause them. These words touched Duan where it was necessary, and she replied that sometimes it seems to her that if no one in the world was swearing, then everything would be much better, and she would be the most ordinary girl. In response, the sympathetic guy patted her on the head, and then added that there is a lot of injustice in this world, stupid people and disgusting places, and if you don't swear, then how can you express all the longing in your soul? The main character also added that swearing is not bad, you just have to do it at the right moment, because then you can even save some superhero. Hearing these words, the girl smiled and thought about how wise the guy was talking. At that moment, Lu approached the waiter and asked for the bill, but the girl stopped him and said that she was treating. At that moment, a mock fight broke out between the guys over who should pay for dinner. The guy said that the girl should not pay at the cafe, but Duan claimed that she was doing it as a sign of gratitude that Lu had saved her. Suddenly, they heard the sound of a message saying that 56 yuan had been transferred to the young man's account. They turned their heads to the side and saw Jen standing there. He showed the screen of his phone, on which the money transfer was visible, and said that he would treat them today. The guys whispered among themselves. Lu told Duan that Zheng had spent money and it was not good, and the girl even suggested that now the end of the world had come. In response, the guy told his classmates not to make such faces and added that he tried very hard to save money in order not to lose people close to him. However, after this incident, Jen realized that if you go to extremes, then in the future, on the contrary, you can lose all important connections for a person. Then the guy said that he knows that it was the guys who helped him to take on his former appearance. So he asked Lu and Duan if they would mind becoming his friends. The main character hugged Jen with one hand and the girl with the other, laughed and said that they had become friends for a long time. At this moment, the young man did not notice how the goblin's spirit came out of him. The expert on the unknown Nanjinghong was resting lying on the bed in a luxurious robe. There was an attractive girl sitting next to him, who had quite a few clothes on. The man turned to her and asked if everything was in order here. The girl called him brother and asked what he meant, because they do business according to the rules. After that, the man got up, took his shirt and said he was going to leave. He also asked about what according to the rules means. However, the girl did not answer this question and realized that the man was unhappy. She ran after him, hugged him tightly by the hand and asked him not to leave. Then she lowered her voice and said with a sly smile that, to tell the truth, they sometimes make an exception to the rules. This answer angered the man even more. He curled his lips, pushed the girl away from him so hard that she fell to the floor and asked her about who she took him for. The girl was also angered by this and she told the man with displeasure that she did not understand what he needed at all, because according to the rules he did not like it, and not according to the rules, too. She decided that the brother just likes to mock people. At this point, the man had already dressed and asked the girl if she really thought he was bullying people. The girl was confused and asked in response about what the man meant, and also expressed her concerns about the fact that he got too excited. In response, the man smiled and told the girl to stop pretending, adding that he felt this sulfuric smell from her body. After that, the girl showed her true appearance, with horns, wings and a devil's tail. She immediately realized that the man was holding a dagger made of hybrid oil in his hands, and it seemed that death itself had come for her. The man said that the girl was right and jokingly apologized. Then the girl got up, made a cute face and asked the man if he could spare her, because then she would thank him in the best way. Dan didn't say anything in response. When he left the building, it was already night outside. The man was riding on a gyro scooter and talking to him, because apparently there was a spirit in him. Dan asked him how he could now report everything to the Department for the Unknown, because they so sincerely offered him cooperation. The spirit will answer that the probability that the management will end cooperation with the man because of this case is equal to 2%. The man replied that this was true, but the main problem was that he could lose credibility. In the end, Nan realized that he could not tell the truth and could only report that the girl had run away. The spirit replied that the probability that the department would find out the truth was 83%. Then Nan thought that maybe he should focus better on the other unknown ones. The gyro scooter spoke again and said that the probability of finding an unknown person in the area is 95%. The man tensed and began to look carefully around. Then he saw the main character walking towards him. Nan told him that he saw that the guy had tasted something delicious, and then asked him if he liked it. Lu tensed, stopped and asked the man what he meant. From a little fright, sweat broke out on his forehead. The man repeated his question about whether the guy liked what he had just eaten, but this time his voice was rougher and his gaze was tougher. At that moment, Beishu appeared next to the young man and shouted at Lu to run. The guy used his thunder step and ran home as fast as possible. The man remained in place and only his gyro scooter said that the probability of escape of the main character is 0. After that, some additional equipment appeared on it. The man immediately realized that the spirit inside the main character is a Killin and he was very interested in it. At that moment, the main character was running up to the dead end and then Beishu told him to run up the wall. He obeyed him and climbed behind the building, continuing to run along it. The young man deftly and quickly jumped from roofs to walls and back, running away from Nan. However, after a while, he looked back and saw a man next to him. Despite the fact that the main character himself was standing on the wall of one of the buildings at that moment, pulling high enough. It turned out that the same equipment on the gyro scooter served as a jet engine, and with the help of it the man was able to climb up and fly in the air, while not making much effort. Realizing that they had caught up with him, Lu decided to make an unexpected maneuver, as it seemed to him, and abruptly descend down the wall, back to Earth. With great speed, the main character slid through the windows of the house, approaching the asphalt. Nan was still in the air at this moment. When the guy finally landed with a crash, a cloud of dust formed around him. But in the next second, a golden circle appeared on the ground, and the guy was bound by the same golden chains. It became immediately clear that it was created by magic. Luya tried to resist the chains that were squeezing him, but it was unsuccessful. In the end, Nan appeared in front of him, sitting on the chair that his gyro scooter had turned into. The man glared at the guy and ordered him to answer who he is and why he is not a person, but at the same time he is not a kinglin. The main character also glared at the man and did not answer him. Then Nan scratched the back of his head and said that he seemed to understand. There is neither a person nor an unknown person in front of him and there are only 2 pigs here. After that, the man shouted Beishu's name and ordered him to get out. Then the master took control of the guy's body and, shouting angrily at the man, asked him what he needed. Nan approached him and answered with a counter question about why Beishu was hiding. The master replied that he was just afraid that the great expert on the unknown would grab him. The man was not satisfied with this answer. He told Beishu to stop being snide and added that the matter was serious. He also said that people have organized a department for the unknown and a man can make a fuss and arrange a Beishu there to work. In addition, the master can receive treatment. Nan asked him about how he liked such an offer. However, the spirit of Majorna managed to answer first and said that the probability of Beishu's consent is 0.2%. The master replied that the probability was actually 0 and announced that he was leaving, and Nan could still stay with Luya. After these words, Beishu returned the body to the young man. The main character asked Nan if they were familiar with the master. The man answered positively. After that, Luya's body transformed and became green and big. It was the goblin who took control of the guy's body. He was able to break the shackles and escape from the circle. The spirit of Nan said that the probability of Beishu's escape was 0 and asked if it was worth catching up with him. The man replied that Beishu could run away, because he and Lu had just absorbed the goblin and had not even had time to digest it yet, so if you put pressure on them now, the master could die. Nan was surprised that Beishu seemed to be unknown, but still did not understand that food should be chewed thoroughly. On the roof of the school, when Lu was able to defeat the goblin, Beishu told the guy that he had nothing to worry about, because he would devour the monster. The young man agreed, but said that the master should act faster, because Lu does not want his classmates to see him with a mouth full of blood. Right now, all 3 of them were in the dimension of the main character. Lu and Beishu were standing over the goblin, which was small this time. The guy asked the master again about whether he understood correctly that Beishu simply could not digest the goblin at that time. The master calmly agreed with Lu, but this answer did not suit him, and even angered him. The main character didn't understand why Beishu was talking about it so calmly, and he was even more worried about the fact that he didn't know what to do with the goblin now. The master replied that the goblin was their target. He also added that they could use the unknown's flesh today to restore Beishu's stomach, and this goblin could be divided into 2 portions. Lu was satisfied with this answer, and he even said that he had long ago come up with what skill he wanted to get. Beishu also agreed with the guy, and that's where they parted. After that, the young man woke up behind the asphalt, somewhere in the alley. He got up and went home, but Nan was behind him. The man was indignant and surprised that the guy didn't even notice him, although only thanks to him, no one has eaten the main character yet, and he can't even say thank you. But then the man thought that he would still be in the black, because he was going to pass Beishu. Behind Nan's back at this time lay a mountain of dead unknowns who were going to attack Lu while he was out. The man told his spirit to contact some old man and asked him to send people to this place in order for them to remove the bodies. The spirit replied that the probability of successfully sending a message is 100%. After a while, two young men appeared on the spot. The girl was obviously glad that they had finally found this mountain of the unknown. The guy in response looked at some papers and asked his partner if she really thought that his idol was deceiving them. Hearing the word idol, the girl was surprised and asked the guy if he was familiar with this person. She also added that even if all these unknown people belong to Class B, but still to kill so many at a time is quite impressionable. At this time, the girl was scanning the unknown with the help of some device. The guy replied that, on top of everything else, the existence of the unknown was recognized only a couple of weeks ago, because such a resurrection of supernatural power has not been seen for 1,000 years. The girl agreed with her partner and added that their management was founded only a week ago, and even if there were few unknown ones before the resurrection, they still existed and 3 great specialists were already fighting with them at that time: Nan Jinghong, Chang Chunde and Tong Huabi. The girl was confused that her partner did not even mention the name of the head of the department, and she told the guy about it. But he replied that the boss was certainly engaged in research and provided them with some kind of equipment. But there are rumors that when he was asked to come out of retirement, he was so pathetic that the other 2 bosses simply did not pay attention to him. By this time, the guys had already removed all the bodies of the unknown, which turned into small stones. The girl was outraged that Nick's other 2 beginnings behaved like this, because the world has already become like this. She also didn't understand what these people wanted at all. In a fit of emotion, the girl kicked the very pebble, and when she ran to pick it up, the scanner on her hand beeped. The girl took advantage of it and found a trace of an unknown S-class on the asphalt. It was a trace of Beishu and Lai's body when he was passed out. This discovery amazed both employees. The guys walked on through the streets of the night city. The girl in a plaintive tone told her partner that it was already so late and asked how long they still had to patrol. The guy replied so that she would stop whining and added that the unknown are most active at this time of day. The girl yawned and said that after all, the specialists had already cleaned up this territory and she was not sure that they definitely needed to inspect it. Suddenly, a special bracelet for tracking the unknown, which was on her hand, began to beep. The girl realized that the monster was close and told her partner to run after her as soon as possible. When the guys turned the corner, a terrifying picture appeared in front of them. Unknown strangled another, the same, but below her level. The one that was stronger was Duan. She got rid of her opponent with a slight movement of her hand, splashing her blood everywhere. Then she saw 2 guys in front of her, but she did not harm them in any way, but only disappeared. The guy and the girl were scared, because the unknown was able to kill the same Class B monster in an instant. Looking at her special course detector bracelet, the girl realized that even he could not determine which class this girl belongs to. At this time, Nan came to his teacher. He was sitting at the morgue table and had a quiet dinner with his friend. The old man told the man to sit down to eat next to him. Nan was surprised by such a request, because he did not want to eat right in the morgue. But the old man just laughed and said that there was nothing wrong with it, because we would all end up here sometime. Nan said that his teacher was right, went to the table and sat down on the 3rd chair. Then the old man asked Nan if he had helped Lao Ma with the cases. The man answered positively and added that he had killed a couple of unknown ones. Then he asked his teacher if he was dissatisfied with this. The old man was surprised by such a question and said that it was ridiculous for ordinary people to endure the resurrection of supernatural power, and the teacher was glad that there were such responsible people as Nan. The man closed his eyes from fatigue and put his head down, said that for such people life is much easier. The teacher replied that Nan was stronger than him anyway, and then asked the guy if he knew why the old man had called him to this place. Nan was embarrassed, scratched his head and told the teacher that he knew perfectly well that he was not his smartest student. The teacher became sad and told the man to guess how many people come to this morgue every day after the resurrection of the supernatural. When Nan asked about the number, the old man replied that he had no way of knowing, because he does not do this, but there are really a lot of bodies coming in. However, then the old man added that those who enter the morgue are still very lucky, but those who were swallowed up in terrible agony were unlucky. After these words, the old man got up from the table, walked past the guy and told him to follow him. Nan obeyed the teacher. The old man went to one of the boxes with corpses and pushed it away. In it lay the bloody and bitten body of a young man. All three of them looked at him, and then the old man asked Nan about what he thought about this. The man suggested that this man was mutilated for fun and it must be the work of an unknown at least S-class. Then the old man told the man to pay attention to the 2 bites on the man's neck, because they were made at the same time. Nan's gaze changed abruptly and he was pierced by the guess that this was done by some kind of snake. The teacher only remained silent in response. Nan took hold of his head and said that this animal was very cruel and could only be killed by lightning, so in that case he would have to call Tong Huabi. Then the old man asked the man if he was really pretending to be a fool. Nan did not understand what the old man meant and looked at him questioningly. Then the teacher happened and reminded Nan that he had one familiar killin. Luai was just lying on the bed at home at that time. He had just gone to bed and was about to go to sleep when he suddenly sneezed. Then the guy wondered if he accidentally caught a cold while lying on the asphalt. Duan was lying on her bed at home and thinking that Lu should have absorbed that unknown one who once took control of her body. The girl didn't understand why these strange things were still happening to her. For her, it looked like she was wandering in another world and falling asleep. The girl really hoped that this would not happen again today. However, unfortunately, everything did not happen the way she wanted. Her eyes lit up red, and a black aura hovered around her. The girl, or rather what controlled her body, forced her to get out of bed and go outside. The next morning, Luai was walking to school as if nothing had happened. Suddenly, he saw the headman in the distance and he wondered who she was talking to. Approaching, the main character found that the girl was laughing with Nan and asked him if he was really Lu's older brother. The main character was scared by this and he only thought that this eccentric Jinghong had come to him again and decided to get him. To spite the young man, at that moment Duan turned her head and saw the guy next to her. The girl smiled, waved to the young man and happily informed him that his older brother had come to him. Lu was surprised that Nan called himself his brother, because the man was at least twice as old as the main character. But nevertheless, the guy asked the headman to leave them alone so they could talk. The girl obediently left so as not to disturb the men, and, saying goodbye to the nanny, left them together. Nan and Lu then went up to the roof of the school, where they were able to continue the conversation. The guy asked the man if he understood correctly that Nan had come for Beishu. The man was surprised to say that he actually came for a young man and added that he needed the guy's help. At that moment, Yadu was relieved to think that Nan was not going to attack, so he could relax a little. Then he asked the man if there was such a thing that Beishu had already refused him. Then Nan said again, more insistently, that he had said that he had not come for Beishu, but for Lu. Then the guy scratched his head and, trying to find the words as best as possible, said that it seemed to him that the man did not really understand their relationship with Beishu. However, Nan did not let the guy finish talking and interrupted, saying that in fact he understands everything. The man also added that it is enough for him to give the guy a taste of the unknown S-class and he will be full for a whole month. Then Nan came even closer to Lu and asked him if the guy didn't want to go back to normal life. Such a question put the young man at a dead end. But he quickly pulled himself together and asked the man about how he could still help him, and not Beishu. The guy also added that he thinks Nanso is strong enough. In response to this, the man said that he was really strong. But the point is that Nan will fight, and Lu will just need to help the man. To be more precise, Lu will have to use the power of thunder to overcome the protection of the unknown. The young man tensed up and asked the man if it was really that simple. Nan replied that everything was really like that and asked the guy about what he finally decided. Lu thought for a while, but then shook Nan's hand and so they agreed. After that, Lu found himself in his monastery, where he was able to meet Beishu. The guy apologized to the master for making the decision for him. However, he replied that it did not matter, because even if Beishu tried to dissuade the guy, he simply would not listen to the unknown. After that, the young man asked the master about what kind of relationship he still had with this Jinghong. Beishu ran away and replied to the main character that instead of starting such boring topics for conversation, he should better monitor the situation in the outside world. At this time, Lu and Nant came to some tall building. This was their destination. Entering it, the main character made a remark that this place is very beautiful, and it is immediately clear that there is no organization for 10 days. Then the man replied that it was rumored. Mickey was even invited to work by some other organizations, but he did not go into details. Looking around, the young man realized that these people have a lot of power, and said these thoughts out loud. Hearing this, Nan stopped abruptly so that the guy cut into the man's back. Then he turned around and told the main character right to his face that he was mistaken, because he and Lu are them, and this organization is separate. A beautiful girl was sitting surrounded by goblins in some magical forest. There was obvious annoyance and dissatisfaction on her face. She told her subordinates to scout the situation due to the fact that she was told that a lot of unknown people have been disappearing lately. One of the goblins, calling the girl mistress, said that they saw how all those unknown were brutally killed. The girl approached the body of one of the unknown and felt an unknown aura from her. Then the lady asked the goblins if they had found out who it was. They only remembered that it was the same creature that possessed Duan. At this time, Lu was still following Nanmi, thinking about what the man generally meant when he said we and they. The guy suggested that Nan thinks that compared to the people from this place, his relationship with the young man is closer. After a while, Nan stopped in front of a door and said that they had come. Lu wanted to object and ask him what to do, because he is now unknown, but the man did not listen to him and only opened the door. Behind it was the office of the head of the Ma. The man was obviously very happy that Jinghong came and greeted him. Nan also greeted the boss. Then the man asked why Nan had come to him. He replied that he needed all the materials for the snake. Ma invited Jinghong to sit down and talk, adding that he had just bought a great tea. However, this answer did not suit Nan. He got angry, knocked on the table and said that he needed these materials now. Ma calmly noted that Nan is very hot-tempered and added that the man has been like this since childhood. Lu had been standing quietly in the room all this time and felt increasingly uncomfortable. Jinghong turned around and, about to leave the office, said that in that case, they should no longer cooperate and they would be on their own. The boss also told Nan not to make hasty decisions and added that the case materials had already been handed over to Deputy Jin. He also said that if the man takes the case on the snake now, he will lose his reputation. Hearing this, Nan was surprised and asked about how many lives such a reputation should cost. The man was so angry that he threw the boss off the table and grew up with cups and tea. He yelled at him and asked if his office was dealing with the unknown or just promoted. The wooden tray that fell to the floor broke, and then Lu became even more embarrassed by what was happening. The guy didn't know where to put himself at all. Suddenly, a suitcase appeared on the table in front of Nan. The man opened it and found materials on the snake case there. The boss said that he tried to hide it well, but Nan found the case anyway. Jinghong asked irritably if it was necessary to arrange all this, but Ma did not answer anything. He just got up from his chair and said he was going to go rest. The boss also added that since Nan had taken the material from him, it was better for him to take his bones away from here. In response, Jinghong expressed his respect towards the old man and said that now he owed him a new tea set. Ma only replied that he wanted a service with a black pattern. The man told the boss to send him a bill of accounts because he still has to pay him for the work. Then he asked if the boss would give him and Lu some weapons since they had come anyway. Hearing about the weapon, the guy immediately perked up.